The journey of civil rights in the United States is a complex tapestry woven from threads of struggle, resilience, and profound change. It is a narrative that stretches back to the very founding of the nation, where the ideals of freedom and equality were enshrined in the Declaration of Independence, yet simultaneously contradicted by the existence of slavery. The seeds of civil rights were planted in the soil of this contradiction, nurtured by the voices of those who dared to demand justice and equality. The timeline of civil rights in America can be traced back to the early 19th century, a time when abolitionists began to rally against the institution of slavery. Figures like Frederick Douglass emerged from the shadows of oppression, using their voices and pen to advocate for the freedom of enslaved people. The abolitionist movement gained momentum through the 1830s and 1840s, with publications like The Liberator and the establishment of the Underground Railroad, which provided a lifeline for countless individuals seeking freedom. This period was marked by a growing awareness of the moral imperative to end slavery, culminating in the Civil War. The Emancipation Proclamation of 1863 was a watershed moment, declaring the freedom of all enslaved individuals in Confederate states. However, the end of the war did not signal the end of racial injustice. The Reconstruction era, while initially a time of hope, quickly devolved into a struggle against the pervasive racism that plagued the South. The passage of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments aimed to secure rights for African Americans, yet the rise of Jim Crow laws in the late 19th century institutionalized segregation and disenfranchisement, creating a new form of oppression. The early 20th century saw the emergence of organizations like the NAACP, founded in 1909, which sought to combat racial discrimination through legal challenges and advocacy. The Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s brought forth a cultural explosion, celebrating Black art, music, and literature, while also highlighting the ongoing struggles for equality. Yet, despite these advancements, systemic racism remained deeply entrenched in American society. The mid-20th century marked a turning point in the civil rights movement. The 1954 Supreme Court decision in Brown v. Board of Education declared that racial segregation in public schools was unconstitutional, igniting a firestorm of resistance in many Southern states. This landmark ruling galvanized activists and set the stage for a decade of intense struggle. The Montgomery bus boycott of 1955, sparked by Rosa Parks' refusal to give up her seat, became a symbol of resistance and the power of collective action. Under the leadership of figures like Martin Luther King Jr., the movement gained national attention, advocating for nonviolent protest as a means to achieve social change. As the 1960s unfolded, the civil rights movement grew in strength and visibility. The Freedom Rides of 1961 challenged segregation in interstate bus travel, while the Birmingham Campaign of 1963 brought the brutal reality of racial violence into the homes of millions through television broadcasts. The March on Washington in August 1963, where King delivered his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech, became a defining moment in the struggle for civil rights, uniting people of all races in a call for justice. Despite these victories, the fight for civil rights was met with fierce resistance. The assassination of Medgar Evers in 1963 and the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, which killed 4 young girls, underscored the violent backlash against the movement. Yet, these tragedies only served to strengthen the resolve of activists. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were monumental legislative achievements, outlawing discrimination and protecting the right to vote for African Americans. However, the struggle for civil rights did not end with these legislative victories. The late 1960s and 1970s saw the rise of other movements advocating for the rights of women, LGBTQ+ individuals, and other marginalized groups. The Black Power movement emphasized racial pride and self-determination, while figures like Malcolm X and the Black Panther Party introduced new strategies for activism. The fight for equality became more inclusive, recognizing the intersections of race, gender, and sexuality. As the decades progressed, the civil rights movement continued to evolve. The 1980s and 1990s brought attention to issues such as police brutality, economic inequality, and the AIDS crisis, which disproportionately affected the LGBTQ+ community and people of color. The Rodney King incident in '91 and the subsequent Los Angeles riots in '92 highlighted the ongoing struggles against systemic racism and police violence. The turn of the century ushered in a new era of activism, with movements like Black Lives Matter emerging in response to the killings of unarmed Black individuals by law enforcement. The digital age provided new platforms for organizing and raising awareness, allowing voices that had long been marginalized to be heard. The protests following the death of George Floyd in 2020 galvanized a global movement, demanding justice not just for one individual, but for an entire system that perpetuated racial inequality. Today, the civil rights movement is far from over. The fight for equality continues in various forms, addressing issues such as mass incarceration, voter suppression, and economic disparity. The legacy of those who fought for civil rights is felt in every corner of society, from the halls of power to grassroots organizations. The timeline of civil rights in the United States is not just a history lesson. It is a living, breathing testament to the ongoing struggle for justice and equality. Each moment, each victory, and each setback is a reminder that the fight for civil rights is a journey, not a destination. As we reflect on this timeline, it is crucial to recognize the interconnectedness of various movements for justice. The fight for civil rights is not isolated. It is part of a larger tapestry of struggles against oppression, whether that be the fight for women's rights, LGBTQ+ rights, or immigrant rights. Each movement draws strength from the others, creating a powerful coalition of voices demanding change. The civil rights movement teaches us that change is possible, but it requires relentless dedication and courage. It reminds us that progress is often met with resistance and that the path to justice is fraught with challenges. Yet, it is through these challenges that we find our strength and resilience. The stories of those who came before us inspire us to continue the fight, to stand up against injustice, and to advocate for a world where equality is not just an ideal, but a reality. In this ongoing narrative, we must also acknowledge the importance of education and awareness. Understanding the history of civil rights in the United States is essential for fostering empathy and promoting social change. It is through education that we can dismantle the myths and stereotypes that perpetuate racism and inequality. By teaching future generations about the struggles and triumphs of the civil rights movement, we empower them to carry the torch forward. Moreover, the civil rights timeline is a reminder of the power of collective action. It illustrates that change is not achieved by individuals alone, but through the solidarity and collaboration of communities. From the grassroots organizing of local activists to the national campaigns led by prominent leaders, every effort contributes to the larger movement for justice. It is in this unity that we find our greatest strength, as we come together to challenge the status quo and demand a more equitable society. As we look to the future, we must remain vigilant and committed to the ideals of justice and equality. The fight for civil rights is not merely a chapter in history. It is an ongoing struggle that requires our active participation. We must listen to the voices of those who are marginalized, amplify their stories, and work together to create a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. The timeline of civil rights in the United States is a testament to the enduring spirit of those who have fought for justice. It is a story of perseverance, courage, and hope, a reminder that the quest for equality is a journey that transcends generations. Each step forward is a victory, each setback a lesson learned. As we continue this journey, let us honor the legacy of those who came before us by standing up for what is right, by challenging injustice wherever we see it, and by striving for a future where the promise of freedom and equality is fulfilled for all.